What's up? Hey, hello, everyone. Wow, so today we are back going to be talking about US Survivor again. It has been such a long hiatus since we last talked about US Survivor. So today we are doing our season 41 cast assessment for Survivor US. So my name is Rachel.
I'm Alyssa, and we were talking before the stream started how it's kind of weird that Survivor Season 41 doesn't have like a tagline or anything. Like, I feel like a lot of the most recent Survivor seasons have had something like Edge of Extinction, Heroes, Healers, Hustlers, Second Chances, whatever, whatever. So, David versus Goliath. And now it's just Survivor 41. So, I'd be interested to see if we get something or if it's just going to be Survivor 41 for the rest of forever.
I think at least for 41, 42, it seems like there is going to be no little caption, subtitle, tagline of the season since there is no quote theme for it. But I think that's definitely something we will also talk about in a future preseason video because today we're doing a cast assessment. We're thinking on Thursday after Big Brother airs the live eviction, we will do a tribe reaction assessment of the tribe divisions since those were just announced this past week as well. In the next coming weeks before Survivor 41 starts, we'll also do our boot list where we sort of guess where people are going to go home as based off of all of this preseason press, interviews, things like that. And then we'll do a twists and tricks podcast talking about everything from like what is this monster they're talking about, idols, any kinds of twists, fire tokens, things like that that may come up for Survivor Season 41. But for this cast assessment, we really just went off of the parade interviews that Mike Bloom has posted and some of the like ET Entertainment Weekly kind of YouTube videos that they posted, but those were like 2 minutes and 10 minutes long. And then on TikTok and Instagram, Survivor on CBS posted some short videos so far, but we haven't watched those longer length cast assessment videos. We know Rob has a podcast. Rob and Mike are doing those interviews, but we didn't want to get biased from reading other people's reactions or listening to Rob and Mike talk about their reactions to the cast interviews. So we'll save those for the tribe reaction to get into that, but this is just our initial cast assessment without anyone else's judgment coming in.
Yeah, and like Rachel said, we're going to be doing a boot list later, so this isn't even really going to be talking about how well we think they're going to do in the game. It's more just talking about like what we read, what we think of them as like characters. And I guess we always like to add the disclaimer that when we talk about Survivor players, we're talking about them as like characters on a television show. And like obviously the Survivor interviews that they have are like a couple of paragraphs, and obviously that can't reflect someone's entire life. So if we say something negative about them, we're not saying something negative about them as a person. It's just about like their interview. So yeah.
Yeah, so judging them based on a character on a television show, I guess starting with overall thoughts for this cast, just even before the cast, I don't know about you, Alyssa, but on the parade.com, looking at these little questionnaires, 3 words to describe yourself, who's your biggest hero, what Survivor player are you going to play the most like? For on my website, you had to like click through each one, and it was like a 2-inch long screen that you could read, and you had to scroll. It was so annoying to read, and I was like, can they not just have it all on like the side of the screen? Why did I have to scroll to read their whole interview?
Yeah, that was annoying because it was also like you got 3 lines of text, and these are like paragraph long things. So
yeah, it was so hard to read because I was like, am I still on the same question? And you can't scroll it because then it goes too fast. You have to literally click the down arrow to go down one line to keep reading. I just didn't want to read any of them because it was so hard to access the information.
yeah. So that aside, though, I feel like this is a pretty solid cast overall, and it definitely seems like there's a lot of characters in this cast.
I do wonder, it seemed like a lot of people grew up with single parents or they had a death of a parent or grandparent recently or when they were younger. And it seems like multiple people have had loved ones die due to cancer. So I do wonder if things like that will come up in the actual episodes of people bonding over past experiences like that. And I do, if like they are willing to talk about it and share about it on the island with other people, it could be a interesting learning moment to see, oh, this is how the person was in real life. This is what they've gone through. Because like when we were watching Survivor South Africa, we never get any of those real life character moments. So it would be interesting to see how Survivor US can bring those background information of these people into the actual show so we can learn more about them as a person outside of the show and how that experience is going to translate into the show.
Yeah, and I think we saw that really well in Millennials versus Gen X, like when Adam and Jay were talking about their moms and like how their moms being sick like affected their lives and stuff like that. So I do agree that that's something that will hopefully bring a lot of really good human moments into the show.
Another big thing, a lot of people from similar locations in the United States, and even two people like born in Canada, which is very interesting. So, a lot of people from California, Florida is popular, New York, Texas. So, all of those major city states, I feel like. And even if the person isn't located there now, there's people that are born in a state where other people are now located in, or they're both born in the same state but have moved out of state kind of thing. So it'll be interesting to see if people bond together based off of their location.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because there are some places like California where it's like California is a pretty big state. So just because you're both from California doesn't necessarily mean that you have like something to bond over, but we'll have to see.
I guess, yeah, California, super big. I went to college in California, and it is interesting to see like in state students from California, even if you're from like Los Angeles, San Diego, SoCal, and then other students are from NorCal Bay Area, they can still, I don't know, relate over things of being from California, even if they aren't from the same city or town or something. So I think, I don't know, maybe it's one of those states with California where people just bond over being from that state, even if they aren't necessarily, next door neighbors or something. It just seems like they have a affinity towards it.
Yeah, like I said, we'll have to see. I didn't pay as much attention to who was from the same states as other people, so maybe I'll go back through and look at that again after we're done with our podcast.
Another big thing, Todd was a very popular winner pick. So many people were like, I want to play like Todd. And so maybe they were watching Survivor China during their quarantine period because, I don't know, Todd wasn't on Winners at War. So it seems like recency bias. People would maybe put more of the recent winners, recent players. But Todd just coming back, even on past seasons, he hasn't been mentioned this much.
Yeah, I feel like we got a lot of Todd and we got a lot of Kim, which like I feel like Kim is one of those winners where like she's considered by the Survivor community to be one of the better winners, but she's not often brought up, I feel like, as someone that people want to play like. Like I feel like normally we get like Parvati, Boston Rob, Sandra, and other like sprinkling of answers, but not really anyone like super defined. But I noticed that quite a few people also said Kim.
Kim coming back after season 40. So, I don't know. Finally, I think a big thing this season, it seems like there's a lot of young people, a lot of students who are in undergrad, and a lot of people from like really top schools. We have MIT, Georgetown, Harvard, U Chicago, someone in medical school, someone in law school, a lot of people with degrees, and we have a teacher on the cast, and I believe that we have a former professor on the cast as well. So maybe after season 40, they were really trying to do that teacher student thing when they were asking for 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds to apply for the show. But it's like, dang, it could have been student versus teacher because there's so many of them.
Yeah, and I wonder if part of that is just like who is able to afford taking off time in order to come play Survivor. Because it's like if you're a student, you can just take a gap semester or something like that. So I do wonder like how much of Survivor's casting has to do with like who can afford to take the time off to come and like be on the island for 30 days, which is it's an even longer period because they have the 2-week quarantine before they go to Fiji, and I think that they'd have to quarantine upon coming back from Fiji as well. So that's just one thing I was thinking about when I was looking at this cast, just because it seems like there's a lot more like I guess white collar people. Like there is one grocery store clerk, but it seems like a lot of them are more like upper class, I would say.
That's really interesting because, especially with online school and stuff, if I had a lot of friends take gap semesters or gap years this past year because they didn't want to do online school. So it could be a thing. Oh, online school isn't as good as in-person school. I'm paying the same price, whether it's online or in person. Let me take a gap year. Let me apply for TV shows or apply for other jobs and stuff and see what happens. So I think that is really fascinating that certain people may have had better, more free time, I guess, more opportunity to go on Survivor, especially during the pandemic.
Yeah. So maybe that's something that will be brought up because I feel like you can't really have a season of Survivor right now without talking about the pandemic and how the pandemic has changed everything for people.
Yeah, and with these students, there are like 3 20-year-old/21-year-old students on there. So Alyssa, we're older than 3 people on the cast, which I feel like doesn't really happen that much since we are pretty young. And I don't know, I feel like we've talked about it a lot when we've had other like 18-year-olds on Survivor. And even we did a podcast recently talking about teenagers on Survivor and how we think that, I don't know, 18 to even 23 is sort of, personally, I think a little bit young to be on Survivor, especially with all of the mental health things that previous Survivor contestants have talked at length about. And I do worry with with the students, maybe if it were a different season, they would have difficulty fitting in or gaining agency in the game, because if the cast also has a lot of older people. If you were 45, 50, are you really going to be listening to a 20-year-old boss you around? Are you going to give a 20-year-old $1 million at the end of this if they're sitting next to someone with a family or kids? Like, I don't know. I think that does play into the cast and dynamics.
Yeah, but I feel like because there are more younger people this time around, that won't be as big of an issue.
I agree. That's the thing, because there are so many students and so many people still in school, whether they've gone back to school or there's multiple people with like master's degrees or MBAs who have gone through a lot of schooling as well. You do have something in common with those people because everyone has been through a lot of schooling. So it probably won't hinder them like this season, but I can see in future seasons if they're trying to cast 18-year-olds and they're the only 18-year-old, I don't know really how much agency you can get as someone just out of high school or someone still in college, especially all of these pandemic college students. They're like sophomores and juniors at age 20, 21. You've only gone to like 1 year maybe in-person college.
Yeah, but I feel like the COVID pandemic is in some ways like kind of an equalizer between people because it's like now everyone has this like shared experience of like having a really rough time in the world. So it's not like you can be like, oh, your life is so easy because it's like, sorry, my life isn't easy. My college experience was interrupted by a global pandemic. So it's like one of those things where, like, obviously COVID hit some people harder than others, but it's not like anyone has had an easy time of life during COVID.
Yeah, not so much that online classes are easier than in-person college classes, but more so that I think in-person college classes, you talk to a lot more people, you can relate with a lot more people, which would be more similar to Survivor than someone who has only done like online classes kind of thing, versus it's like, oh, as a freshman in college, you're joining clubs, you're meeting people, you're going to the dorm. But if your whole college experience is in online and you never moved into the dorm, I think your social game, like you would have learned a lot for your social game if you've lived in the dorm as like a 20-year-old playing Survivor, because you meet so many new people in the dorm, you know?
Yeah, you'll have to interact with more people who might not necessarily be like you.
Yeah, so I think like that kind of experience would have related really well to Survivor, but I guess it depends if their dorms are open or if they've done in-person school versus only online school kind of thing. But yeah, any other overall thoughts, Alyssa?
Not really.
Awesome. So we are going to go through this cast alphabetically by first name and just talking through each one from their parade interviews as well as those little video clips online. So the first person that we have is Brad. He is 50 from Wyoming and he is a rancher. He is the first Survivor contestant from Wyoming. And he said he's 6'5". So he's a pretty tall guy, although I feel like in college for me, I had a lot of tall friends that were like 6'4" and above. And I have a friend that is like 6'7", 6'8". So I'm like, dang, 6'5". He would fit in perfectly with all the other tall people.
Yeah, my brother is 6'5", so. But first person from Wyoming, I think that's kind of because Wyoming's population is very small, and not a lot of people from Wyoming, I think, are very interested in reality TV. So I guess good on Brad for being the first person from Wyoming. He's a rancher, which I think is going to be like an applicable experience for Survivor because he has to deal with a lot of animals, he has to deal with the elements, and it just seems like he said stuff like he almost died from a rattlesnake bite, so I feel like that can also be applicable experience. So yeah.
I thought it was interesting how much like near-death experiences he's had. He nearly died from the rattlesnake bite, blown up by a propane tank, and he is a private pilot, which I thought was interesting. And I think, stereotypically you might say, oh, as a farmer, maybe he won't do as well because his job is so different and he like lives away from other people, not like a major city kind of thing. But I agree with you. It seems like Brad could do really well on this show, and it seems like he has really good people skills, and he seems very personable, and he likes to hunt, fish, and help other people pursue their passions, which I thought sounded very life coachy. But the hunting and fishing thing, maybe he could be like the provider, like we were talking about last night with Aussie archetypes being a provider. Maybe Brad will fall into that kind of category of being maybe a father figure, but also providing and hunting, fishing, getting food for his tribe.
I do think it's interesting. He chose one of the like common players to say who you want to play like because he chose Boston Rob. And I guess I'm interested to see how that will play out for him because I feel like you can't be a Boston Rob who also is like, I want to help everyone succeed, because I feel like a lot of what made Rob successful was being kind of snaky. So we'll have to see what happens with Brad.
I didn't see the Boston Rob connection when he says he wants to play like Boston Rob. I wouldn't think that he would play like Boston Rob. So it'll be interesting if Brad does play like Boston Rob. I see Brad as someone people maybe want to like talk to, and like he's very friendly rather than being more like straight-faced, stoic, cutthroat kind. I don't know. Brad just seems very friendly, and I liked in the ET interview or Entertainment Weekly, one of those, he was saying how he thinks Jeff says, oh, you need to play like it's your second time. And I liked how he brought that up because for a lot of Survivor players, we've seen Jeff said, and a lot of people after the show, after they played one time, they're like, oh, I regret not playing harder, faster kind of stuff because I was so worried about ruining my first Survivor experience. So I do like how Brad is aware that he should be playing like it's his second time and maybe being more cutthroat, making those moves. And with a shorter season, you don't really have as much time to be not in the driver's seat.
Yeah, I feel like it's hard because it's like, yeah, a lot of people regret being more cutthroat or not being more cutthroat, but I also feel like a lot of people regret coming out of the gate too fast, too hard.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely a balance where you don't want to like let people stomp all over you. But if you're like going super hard from the very first day, then you might get voted out early anyway. So
yeah, I can definitely see Brad being someone that people want to talk to. I want to be partnered with Brad. He seems like a sort of good alliance member, and I'm excited to see him because I feel like farm people get like a bad rep on reality TV shows.
Yeah, I also like that he's not like a stereotypical farm person in a lot of ways. Like he doesn't have like a super heavy like southern accent or something. So it'll be interesting to see how he does in that regard.
Something funny before moving on to the next person is that with this Survivor 41 cast, it really emulates Big Brother, this recent season that's airing right now's cast, because on Big Brother 23, there was a farmer, they have a flight attendant, they have a student as well. So it seems like, Survivor used to cast based off of archetypes. Oh, the Malcolm, the Ozzy, we need a smart nerd character, we need a dumb jock bro surfer dude character. But now it's like, oh, are they casting based off of jobs? We need a farmer, we need a flight attendant, we need some students in the cast, and then basing it off of that, because Survivor 41 and Big Brother 23 have very similar kinds of people in similar jobs.
Yeah, but that might go back to what I said earlier about like certain people having more time off to do jobs. But speaking of having time off, the next player on our roster is Danny, and he is an ex-NFL player, and that's what they have listed as his occupation. So I guess he hasn't done anything since leaving the NFL. But he is from Houston, Texas. So Texas boy, Texas NFL player.
Yeah, he's 33. And so, for your point about having his job as just ex-NFL player, in his parade interview, he said that he went back to school after leaving the NFL and he got his MBA. So he's also a recent student, I guess, depending on when he ended his football career and when he went back to school to get a business degree, which is very interesting. I don't know. I don't follow football, so I'm like, I don't know him versus other people who follow football might be like, OMG, I love this dude.
He apparently, I'm looking at his Wikipedia page, he apparently played for the Dallas Cowboys and briefly for the Chicago Bears, and it looks like he retired from football in 2015 or 2016. So,
yeah. So recent student then, because that MBA would be a couple years of a program. Also, if he's Texas and also Chicago, there are numerous people from Chicago born there or now working or going to school there. So he could talk about Chicago with them or Chicago sports. If, like those people are really big sports fans, I could think that would be a really, really great way to relate to people, especially because he's played at those two major cities teams that people could like just talk to him about it.
Yeah, I do wonder how much of that you would like want to be like, oh, I was a professional NFL player though, because I feel like people really remember that like NFL players and like other professional sports players get paid a lot of money. So do you really want to give someone who is paid a lot and $1 million? So
yeah, that's the thing. Like we were saying before, a student versus someone who is older, has a family kind of thing. Similar kind of thing. Do you give someone $1 million who might have a lot of money already? Sort of like a doctor might have a lot of money kind of thing. Ex-NFL player might have a lot of money versus a teacher. So I don't know. It's an interesting.
I feel like people think that doctors are paid more than they're actually paid. Just like as a side note, like the average doctor is not actually paid that much more than like another like average professional, especially considering med school loans. Like unless you're in private practice in a really lucrative field, you're probably not making that much money as a doctor, especially if you work for like a public healthcare system. So
okay, yeah, similar thing about lawyers though. A lot of lawyers, if you don't go to like it's the T6, like, the top schools. Like if you're going to like Harvard, Yale, Stanford, the top law schools, you're making like 200K, 300K a year, but also the loans. But also if you don't go to the top law schools, similar things, you're making the same as people who didn't go to law school. So I don't know. I think it's interesting that there are those like misconceptions about, oh, if you are a lawyer, you're making big bucks. If you are a doctor, you're rich, which isn't always the case. But yes, an aside.
Yeah. But anyways, Danny seemed nice. I liked him in his interview. He seemed, again, like very personable. So
He described himself as competitive, which I can definitely see it. As a pro athlete, you're going to be competitive. Otherwise, you wouldn't be a good athlete. You want to win as an athlete, especially as on a team sport like football. You have to want to win to help your team to propel and to succeed. His pet peeve was people not being on time, which I totally relate with. Like he was saying, oh, people that don't honor your time as a person, they're late. And I can relate. You know, people will text you when you're already on your way to meet them for like lunch or dinner, and you're like, why didn't you text me an hour ago? Because it's like, I'm already at the place. I had to leave 15, 20 minutes before. If you're texting me 5 minutes, like, I'm going home.
yeah, I guess it's just like, I feel like that's a common pet peeve, but also one that isn't really going to come up that often on Survivor. But another thing that...
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say something else I noticed in his interview. So if you have something about that pet peeve, we should finish that up first.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say for like all of these word interviews, they ask questions that don't even relate to Survivor. Like a lot of the pet peeves, like their biggest hero. It's not really going to tell you how they're going to play in the game versus questions like, how do you want to play in the game?
Yeah, I think we've talked about that before, about how sometimes like the profiles give you a totally different view of the person because they ask questions that don't really relate. But
especially,
a question...
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, especially how you can fake it and act in your bios, and then on the show you're a totally different thing, or you have some kind of set game that you want to do, but once you get into the show everything changes. And there's always those people that are so, the fans love them so much preseason, but when they get onto the show then they're a dud.
Yeah, I guess it's like the one question I was going to talk about that does relate to like the actual game is the who do you want to play like? And he said he wanted to play like Ben Driebergen. And I feel like that's an interesting answer considering how polarizing of a figure Ben can be in the Survivor community. Just because a lot of people didn't like Ben in Heroes, Healers, Hustlers because they thought that production handed him the win. They didn't like him in Winners at War because they thought he gave up the win too easily by like telling Sarah like it's okay if you vote me off. So I guess that's a really interesting thing. I wonder if Danny like knows how polarizing Ben is, or if it's just like he picks someone kind of like that does things he wants to do without really thinking about like fan reaction.
Great segue, Alyssa, for our asides there, because talking about Ben was the next thing that I wrote down for Danny. It reminded me of Pinty from Survivor South Africa this most recent season, because Pinty said that she wanted to play like Ben, and oh my God, it was someone that was also sort of like disliked in the Survivor community, or like not seen as, you know, a good Survivor player to be like. And so I don't know. It was interesting because Danny was saying he wants to be a strong physical player and then he'll eventually become a target. But honestly, I could see Danny going pre-merge because he's a pro athlete. Like, you're not going to bring that kind of person into the merge because he could dominate at challenges at the merge.
Yeah, and I feel like it's hard because a lot of times perception versus reality, as far as like a lot of people, I feel like Scott in Brains Beauty Brawn, he was a professional basketball player, but he didn't actually do that great at the challenges, except for the one that was literally shooting things into a hoop. And so I feel like it's one of those things where like based on his like Wikipedia page, he was an okay football player, but he wasn't like the best of the best. So I wonder, like 6 or 7 years post retirement, like is he really going to be that much of a physical threat? You know, like I get that even like the worst NFL player is still better at football than like 99.999% of people. But like, how much of those skills are transferable is my question. Because it's like there was also an Olympic swimmer who played on Survivor, And wasn't she like voted out first? So
I guess not the Elizabeth, but the Katrina of Olympic swimming to go first. I agree. I think it is like the perception versus reality. I think for pro athletes, they get sort of stereotyped, like we were saying, farm people get stereotyped. He's probably going to get stereotyped as a really good athlete, even though, like you were saying, a lot of these Survivor challenges, it's puzzle based. So you need a good brain, you need a good eye for that. It's not really like, let me catch and throw a ball around or like run and stop running really quickly. So I think, like you were saying, if he's maybe his skills can be transferable, but a lot of these Survivor challenges, endurance, more like circus kind of games that you would see at a fair, like shooting hoops, getting your beanbag in the hole kind of thing, doing a puzzle, those are not very similar to playing football and doing the pro football training that they have to go through every day to get on that kind of level. But I do think it's interesting. He says he wants to change the meaning of what a physical threat is to people and make a physical threat as the nerds that are really good at puzzles. And he says, oh, people like me, the physical, strong looking dudes, always get voted out for, quote, no reason at the beginning of the game, which I feel like it's not for no reason, though, because you're going to vote out these strong people closer to merge because it becomes an individual game. Sure, you're strong and you can help the team in the tribe challenges, but you're not voted out for no reason or just because like you're strong. I don't know,
just because I feel like sometimes people do overestimate physical prowess, especially in like Survivor US, where there more often than not is like a puzzle element to it. Like we've talked in our Survivor South Africa thing about how like Chappie's going on like a 4-win immunity streak is like pretty much unprecedented. Like I can't think of anyone in US Survivor who has done that except for like maybe Joe Anglim. But it's like a lot of the people that like we think of as like big buff guys don't actually win that many like physical challenges because like the big buff guys aren't as good at the endurance challenges. They're not as good at the puzzle element of the challenges. So it's like I would agree that there is way too much overemphasis put on voting off the big strong dudes because it's not always those people who are going to be dominating in the physical challenges anyway.
I guess it's a similar kind of thing of like the attractive younger women always being voted out for being attractive and young and, you know, seemingly flirting with all of the men on the cast. So it's sort of a similar thing where it might not be no reason per se, but it's like the perceptions and the stereotyping of people in the game and like the Survivor meta of, oh, strong buff dude, we have to vote him out. Otherwise, like we won't win anything come the merge, or young pretty girl, we need to vote her out because she is going to be the Parvati 2.0, which even on this cast, people are saying certain of the women are going to be the next Parvati, but it's like, that's sort of voting them out for no reason also. Like, they can't help what they look like.
Yeah, so I guess we'll see.
I think for Danny, if he it seems like he's telling people that he is an ex-NFL player. He could say, oh, I played in the NFL 5, 6, 7 years ago, 2015. I'm like old and washed up now. I haven't worked out recently. I think if he plays up the whole, I haven't played football in so long, don't vote me out, because yes, I still have muscles, but those skills from the NFL aren't transferable to these like circus game challenges that we're doing on Survivor. That could help him out for not getting voted out pre-merge. But yeah, I don't know. He seems sort of like a late pre-merge, early merge boot.
Yeah. So maybe he'll succeed in changing the Survivor meta though, and then he would get further.
That's not good for us. We need the puzzle people, the nerds, to stay under the radar, because that means Alyssa and I will be early boots. We need the nerds to not get targeted for being nerdy looking.
Yeah.
So speaking of smart people, we have David, who is 35. He is from California, but he is working in Chicago now, and he is a neurosurgeon. So a doctor, and neurosurgery just reminds me of Derek and Amelia from Grey's Anatomy. From Australian Survivor, this most recent season, there is also a doctor who got who got nicknamed the Dictator Doctor. So I do wonder, will David be McDreamy as Derek Shepherd from Grey's Anatomy, or is he going to be a dictator doctor like Australian Survivor?
Yeah, it seems like he has a really good understanding of like Survivor as a game though. He gave a whole like thesis on Survivor players that he would play the game like, which I thought was like hilarious because they were all like pretty big names in Survivor, but it was like he gave a pretty like decent, it seems like he has a decent understanding of the game and especially of social aspects of the game. So I feel like he would lean more towards McDreamy if he can actually like pull off what he knows like intellectually.
Yeah, he lists Russell Hantz for Russell Hantz's aggressiveness, but the social game of Todd, another Todd mentioned, he wants to have reads like Kelly Wentworth and the social awareness of Cerie. So, like you were saying, the whole thesis of Survivor right there. And like we were saying at the beginning on parade.com, so annoying to try to read his paragraph long time and then like skipping words and stuff. But I don't know, when you're listing so many, it's sort of like for this question, you should pick one or two. You can't be listing every great survivor on the Survivor Mount Rushmore. That doesn't help figure you out as a Survivor player.
Yeah, it's kind of like when people answer questions and they just throw out every buzzword that they know in hopes that one of them will like make them seem smart. So
yeah, I think it's interesting, similar to like the other stereotypes about pro athletes, about being a ranch worker. There's also a lot of stereotypes about being a doctor, like we were saying, how much money he might make might be a detriment, as, oh, we don't want to give him more money because he's already potentially making a lot of money, which may or may not be the case. I also feel like doctors have sort of type A personality, especially as a neurosurgeon. He is probably really good under pressure, but he's used to being the leader, bossing people around in the OR, and dealing with life and death situations. He can't have any kinds of mistakes, which makes sense in the question where the pet peeve question, where he hates people's incompetence, he hates laziness and lack of self-awareness, and he can't tolerate pure ineptness, where I feel like a lot of casuals or fans reading that might be like, OMG, this guy is a butthole. He is going to get voted out first because he's coming off very cocky and arrogant. But I do think it just relates to him being a doctor. You can't have incompetent people in your OR, otherwise your patient will die.
yeah, I will say that he probably hasn't been like the boss of the OR for very long.
I was like, he's young, yeah.
Yeah, he's 35. If he finishes undergraduate at 22, that means he finished medical school at 26, probably 5-year residency. So he probably hasn't even been the boss of the OR for like 5 years even. So I would say that he might not actually be as bossy as people are thinking. Like he still might be very exacting in his work, but like bossy, maybe not.
Yeah, maybe just the word choice with answering the questions comes off as like bossy and arrogant, but I agree. Like he's not super old to be like bossing people around, but he's probably had that experience where he, as an attending, has led the surgery, but also, you know, the person in charge is still there watching. So I think it's interesting, you know, having a surgeon, especially people dealing with those kinds of life and death situations. He's got to be intelligent to go through all of that schooling and stick with it, not drop out, and continue to want to be a doctor. And his reasoning for becoming a neurosurgeon is really interesting and inspiring because he is focusing on treating brain cancer, and brain cancer is what has took his father's life. So I do think, you know, it's really inspiring that like he is doing this for his dad.
Yeah, and I feel like he also has like more emotional acumen than maybe people would give him a credit for. Because it's like if you're dealing with brain cancer patients, you are going to be losing a lot of people. So you really have to develop that empathy for the patient's family. So
yeah, it's really like sad all around. So he probably has a good emotional game, being able to relate to people, getting your patients to trust you, like with their family members' lives in the OR. And I think, David is one to look out for in the game. In the video interview, he said, like the what did you do during quarantine interview, he said he brought a lot of neurosurgery textbooks, so big nerd there. But also he was listening to a lot of Rob Has a Podcast, David Bloomberg interviews podcasts, which I think was really interesting because from his parade interview, you don't really get that he's a fan of the show, but from that interview YouTube video about what did you do during quarantine, it seems like he's a really big fan of the show, which I think will be interesting to see.
Yeah, it will be. Any more thoughts on him before we move on to the next one?
No, I'm excited to see David and how he does.
Yeah. So speaking of doctor, the next person we have, Desean, is a medical student. He's 26 and he's from California, San Bernardino, but he currently lives in Miami. And so I think doctor, medical student, is there going to be some natural vibing there? Or like that seems like it could be something that goes really well. And I feel like medical student is interesting because it's different from like undergraduate student, because obviously you've been through all of undergrad. At 26, it sounds like that he's probably close to finishing medical school. So I feel like that avoids a lot of the stuff we said about students earlier where they don't really know a lot about like life.
I agree. Him being like an older student, but still being a student, he can probably relate to the 20-year-old undergrad kids because he just went through that experience a couple years ago, graduated, applied to med schools, and even the other students like, let's see. Oh my gosh. Sarah is a healthcare consultant. She just finished school. There's other like students that seemingly might be pre-med on the cast. So having David as a doctor, Desean as in med school, maybe he can mentor the other students on med school applications if they're interested in pre-med also. And David can help Desean out with being after medical school, going through residency and stuff like that. I just sort of want to see them interact. Alyssa and I haven't really looked at the tribe the groups of 6 yet, so that'll be the next video. But if they both make it to a tribe swap or merge, or if they're on the same original tribes together, it'll be interesting to see if they butt heads or like if people can come together with their similar like medicine pre-med aspirations.
Yeah, I do think that I'm not sure Desean will go very far in the game because he says that he wants to be like devious in the game. And I feel like in general, when people like say that they want to like be devious or be sneaky or whatever, they end up going very, very hard, a la Tony in Game Changers, where it's like he's crazy running around the beach or whatever. And I feel like that's one of the things that like kind of makes me weary about Desean's like whole thing. Because if your idea is like, oh, I want to like be devious, I want to set the game on fire, that's going to be, it's hard to balance doing that with like playing a good game and a strong game.
Yeah, so with Desean, he also has his bachelor's and master's degree, so it does seem like he has just been doing school his entire life, going back to back to back for all of these different degrees. Like you were saying with the deviousness, he has his own nickname as Devious D-Rad, so it's sort of like Dean with the whole DK chillin' hashtag. Maybe Desean is going to try to be this larger than life character as hashtag devious D-Rad out there. So it'll be interesting. I'm also a little bit wary because his biggest pet peeve is being told what to do. So that might not come into people's good graces if they're building a shelter or something in those early days and someone tells him what to do and then he like has a vendetta against that person or like acts out and doesn't help with the camp setup and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I don't know. It seems like he kind of knows Survivor. He said that he wants to be like Sari and Wendell, which like I wouldn't say that Wendell is like at the top of everyone's list, but he's also not like some obscure player. So I wonder how much of Survivor Desean actually knows.
the love child of Suri and Wendell, which is a little bit interesting, but it's funny. I thought it was, I don't know, on this question about which Survivor player are you most like, Desean and a few others that we'll talk about later in the cast said that they don't have an answer to this question. Their game will be unprecedented. They're not like any other Survivor player that has played before. And I'm like a little annoyed when people answer it that way, because it's like, just answer the question. Give us one or two people, because that doesn't help us if you say you're unprecedented. So at least Desean answered and gave two people. Other people later just literally say they're like nobody you've ever seen before. Like, no, give us someone. Name one person.
I hate to say this, but there's been like 700 people who have played Survivor. You're not that special. Sorry. So,
and it takes a couple years for you to get into that kind of status of creating a new archetype, I feel like.
And I feel like a lot of times it's not that like someone creates something new, it's that they do something old but better. Like, I feel like a lot of, like, Tony did Russell Hance's game but better. So it's one of those things where you're probably not creating something new after 40 seasons, but you're improving on an old thing, which is totally fine. Like, it's fine to say, like, I want to do this person's game, but I want to do it better than they did.
It's hard to always be unprecedented. We're not all that special.
I mean, we're all living in unprecedented times, Rachel.
Oh my gosh, big buzzwords. So the next person we have is Eric. Eric is 51, hometown from Georgia, but he is living in Texas now, and he is a cybersecurity analyst. I think Eric was the former professor from when we were talking about teacher-student professorships. He used to be a professor, I believe, which didn't come up in the interviews, but his pet peeves, he hates people being slothful, condescending, and sycophantic, which I didn't know about you, Alyssa. I Googled this word because I've never heard it before, and the definition is behaving or done in an obsequious way in order to gain advantage. And I was like, okay, what's obsequious? And had to Google that. And so obsequious is obedient or attentive to an excessive or servile degree.
So it basically means being a kiss ass.
Yeah, so it's like, I don't know, big word there, but I don't know. Eric,
college professor, man.
Your parents, are they working in cybersecurity?
No, but I think my sister did a lot of cybersecurity stuff. So,
yeah, any insights there?
I mean, my parents work for the federal government, so I'm not allowed to like hear anything of what they do. When my sister did cybersecurity, she was basically like, it is hard. So, cybersecurity is one of those things that's becoming like really popular recently as like more and more people move online. So it wouldn't surprise me if this guy was like a computer science professor that decided to jump ship so that he could become a cyber analyst contractor and make some serious coin. Like, if I had to place bets on who makes more between the cybersecurity analyst and the doctor, I'm betting on the cybersecurity analyst every time. So,
especially Texas, you know, you would say, you know, big hubs for like government jobs, DC, our area in Maryland, and then also Texas is an up and coming hub. So maybe he works for the government as well down there. I do worry a little bit. Eric, obviously very intelligent, but for the one question where he talks about like what he likes to do, he says he likes scuba diving, looking at the moon, stars, comets, which I think it can be entertaining to his fellow tribe mates, but I do wonder if he is maybe too intelligent that it comes off to people like people don't want to talk to him because he's too smart.
I feel like a lot of times like the nerd character is more seen as like, haha, how cute, and not necessarily like too intelligent. Like, I think a lot about like Cochrane and how like people are like, he's kind of weird, but we're gonna keep him around anyway. So I think he seems like a cool guy. So
I was like, he probably has a lot of really, really interesting stories with the whole moon, stars, and comet talking about through the telescopes. In college, I took an astrology class, and the Oh, yeah, astronomy. See, that's so bad because literally the first day he's like, this is not astrology. But yeah, astro. I just wrote in my notes astro, so my brain just connected. Not a lot of people talking about astrology in their Q&As, which is interesting because I feel like astrology is very popular. I do not follow astrology though, but astronomy course, this guy has like very smart, very published, like those Nobel Prizes and stuff. But he said when we were talking about moon phases in class, he was talking and mentioned how in Survivor, since he watches, he noticed how in like one of these scenes, he could tell that it was actually days prior to when they were saying what day it was, because in the moon, he could tell what phase of the moon and like where it was in the sky to show that Survivor's editing was like tricking us because it wasn't actually the day that they were saying the conversation happened on because the moon was in a different location. So it could be interesting. I don't know. That was just like a funny aside to the telescope talk.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think the scuba diving, he said he's also interested in scuba diving. Maybe that will be helpful in Survivor because he'll know how to dive and get fish and stuff.
Yeah, I guess he'll have to hold his breath though. No air tanks or anything like that. He says he wants to play like Richard Hatch, Wendell, Boston Rob, another one of those people like having those big name characters come up. So it would be interesting once we learn more about these people if they're like actually fans of the show or not.
Yeah, so he seems like he'll be interesting. I feel like the one red flag is he doesn't like lazy people, and there's a lot of lazy people in Survivor. So
yeah, that's why I do worry about the whole like being too smart thing, especially as like one of the older contestants. Brad is 50. If they fall into that like sort of parent role, but like bossy parent role, you could get voted out because people are like, why do I have to listen to you? Especially like, who was it? Desean said his biggest pet peeve is being told what to do. It seems like a lot of these people are sort of stubborn and like to do things their way.
Yeah, but I feel like Survivor, a lot of it is big personalities learning how to work together. So
that's the whole point of the show, a social experiment. So the next person that we have is Erica. She is 32, from Canada, in Canada now. She's a communications manager, but I think she quit her job in order to come to Survivor, or she quit when she was coming out to Survivor. Might not be correlated there. So communications manager, she is only 5 feet tall, so hopefully there are no jumping challenges like we saw in Survivor South Africa recently, because Erica would not be able to jump that high.
Yeah, I will say she's a Canadian who lives pretty close to the border with the United States because she lived in Niagara Falls, which is obviously sharing a border with the U.S., and then Toronto isn't that much further from the U.S.-Canada border. So I feel like she might know more about American culture than other Canadians might do. And Toronto is also like a very urban area. So I feel like a lot of the vibes of Toronto are very similar to the vibes of other cities in the United States.
Yeah, she says she gives off tall vibes at maybe 5'3". I can see it. From her photo, she doesn't look like really short. So maybe she has that kind of energy that makes her seem taller than she really is. She said her pet peeves, she dislikes ignorance and men in ill-fitting jeans, which is quite funny. Hopefully nobody brought jeans or were forced to wear jeans at their casting. So we won't have any of that problem with men wearing weird shaped jeans, skinny jeans, anything like that.
Yeah. And I feel like wearing jeans on Survivor in general is a bad idea. So
you're going to drown. The water in those water challenges will weigh you down so much if you're wearing jeans.
Yeah.
But another funny thing, she mentions Brenda. She wants to be like Brenda on the outside, but Todd underneath. Another Todd mention. And then I wonder if this was purposeful or not. She says that because of Brenda, she doesn't want to be afraid to show her teeth, a la Brenda and Dawn. So it seems like it has to be purposeful making that kind of comment.
Yeah. So I guess someone who has watched at least some Survivor, which is always a good thing.
Yeah, she wants to be manipulative, and she has been manipulative since day one. So it'll be interesting to see. I feel like for Erica, since she is smaller, people will probably underestimate her because she's small and she's cute. So it seems like it'll be interesting if people do underestimate her, like, oh, she's not threatening because she's smaller, but would she get voted out because maybe she's smaller, that people don't think that she's going to do well at the challenges? But I don't know, double-edged sword there, maybe.
It's so strange because it's like people want to vote out the people who are really big physical threats, but then they also want to vote out the people who like aren't going to do well enough in challenges.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you have to be in this very narrow, like good enough to pull your own weight, but not good enough that you're a threat, like category. So.
Mm-hmm. And not bad enough to be voted out because you're bad at challenges for the tribe. But Erica seems fun. She said she's taking comedy and improv classes, so she seems like someone that you'd want to hang out with on the weekends. And she said she watched Australian Survivor over quarantine, so she seems like a big fan.
Yes, she is. When is she going to watch South African Survivor is my question.
Yeah, then she can relate with Nicole being short and not being able to jump and then loses immunity.
Yeah. Anything else to say about Erica before we move on to the next person?
Go for it with Evie.
Evie. So Evie is a PhD student. So a side note, Evie, in all of the like pre-season stuff and during the season of Survivor, identified as a woman. Now she identifies as non-binary and she uses she and they pronouns. So we're going to be referring to her using she or they pronouns. And also we aren't going to be referring to her as a woman, even though she is referred to as a woman in parts of this interview, just because we want to respect her gender as it exists now. So yeah, that's just our disclaimer before we start this. But she is 28 and she is from Westchester, New York, and then currently lives in Arlington, Massachusetts. Like I said, she's a PhD student. It seems like she might be doing a PhD in anthropology based on some of what she said in her interview, but I'm not entirely sure. So
seems like it might be evolutionary biology was mentioned in another part. Evie, another smarty pants, PhD from Harvard. So like we are saying, another student, but they are older students, so 28, not like the other undergrad students being 20, 21, freshly in college. Evie would have more experiences than those other students while also being to relate to those other students as a current student at Harvard. And she can relate as, being at one of those top schools as well. I think Evie looks just like a Canadian YouTuber named Joanna Sedia. They look exactly alike, same glasses and everything. Maybe I even have the same glasses as Evie, so it's like a trend now with these larger glasses. With the evolutionary biology, Evie reminds me of Shane Gould from Australian Survivor. Shane also did research and stuff with like evolution, biology, monkeys. So I don't know, reminds me of that. Maybe they're related, or like Evie is the younger version of Shane Gould, or daughter, maybe.
yeah, I'm not sure I would say that, but good connection, good connection. I took a class on evolutionary biology in my senior year of college, and it was one of my favorite classes ever. So I kind of hope that she gets to nerd out about evolutionary biology, because I would gladly listen to it. She mentioned in her interview something about doing a podcast with Radiolab and how she did a whole segment on queer interspecies romance, which sounds quite up my alley. So I feel like I'm going to be looking for that Radiolab podcast later. But yeah.
Yeah, I think Evie seems super cool. All of their answers, though, with the parade we were talking about are so long. It was so hard to read because of the scrolly thing on parade.com. So one of her pet peeves was that they dislike men. And then they qualify it like, oh, not all men, but machismo men and mansplainers. And I think definitely relatable for them in their PhD program, might have a lot of men in it. And so I can see that as being relatable, especially if like other people are women in STEM. You get that a lot.
Yeah, one of my friends is currently working on a PhD in a STEM field, and she's always talking about how the guys in her lab like frustrate her a lot because they assume that she knows less about like
Mm-hmm.
their shared subject than they do. And yeah, it seems like Evie knows her stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, they're also only 5'2", similar to Erica. I feel like Evie doesn't really look that short in photos and stuff. So tall energy again. Erica and Evie shorter end, but they've got tall energy, so they don't look as short as they say they are. I thought it was interesting for the person that is their hero. They said that their hero is AOC, and so that's the first person so far who has not listed some kind of family member or like parent as their hero person. So I thought that was interesting that they didn't list a family member.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of nice too, though, because like, no offense to everyone who says my mom is my hero, but it's kind of a cliche.
Everyone says that.
Yeah, so it's kind of a cliche. I like that there was a lot of like reasons behind it, and they had a lot of like this is exactly why I like AOC. I do wonder if politics are going to be a struggle on the island just because um, with the whole I don't like men thing, I feel like that can definitely end up biting you in the ass if you can't work well with people. Because I feel like there's a lot of people on Survivor who have a habit of mansplaining. So you might have to like suck it up.
Mm-hmm. I do hope for Evie that the whole men thing might be more of a funny character joke, but also like yes, in real life that is a really really big problem of people thinking that they know more than you just because of their gender. But it does seem like Evie hopefully is able to adapt, and they won't just cut someone off because someone is like a cocky dude, arrogant, but they would still be willing to work with that kind of person. Hopefully, I can definitely see Evie being a polarizing character. You'll either really like them or like really dislike them. It seems like for fans of the show, people like Evie, but it does seem like the Facebook people are going to not like her.
I also feel like Facebook is a very different demographic. So people who are on Facebook, no shade to anyone who regularly uses Facebook, but it's definitely a different demographic, I would say. But I am definitely on the side of I really want to see Evie in the game. It would be cool if they won.
I'm excited. They seem to have a good strategy. They say they want to be close to the center of power, but never directly perceived as making the calls. And I think that is really, really interesting. That's how you sort of want to play the beginning of the game, and then you cut that person and then you take the credit and you're like, no, I was the puppet master pulling all the strings. When in like, but you thought that this person was the person pulling the strings, but no, it was me. I was secretly doing this in this entire time. So like, haha, final tribal council speech.
Yeah. So I think it is kind of, we've talked about this before, how you need to make sure that you're perceived enough as making the decisions that when final tribal does come, you don't get like bowled over, but we'll have to see.
So next we have Jeannie, who is 46 from California, currently in Oregon, and Jeannie is a grocery clerk. So her pet peeve is people who wear their masks incorrectly, and so relatable, very funny.
Yeah, I feel like my brother is also a grocery clerk, and one of the things that like was really scary at the beginning of the pandemic is that like as a grocery clerk, you can't most people who are grocery clerks are not in a financial position where they can like take off work.
Mm-hmm.
And like a lot of grocery stores won't exactly enforce mask stuff very well. Or like if you're wearing a mask but wearing it below your nose, it's not like someone in the grocery store is going to tackle you and be like cover your nose. But like being a grocery store clerk, I feel like is one of those jobs like people consider it essential work, but you're not getting a lot of like thank yous and praises the way that doctors and nurses are. So like I feel for her because that must have been really rough, especially at the beginning of the pandemic when like everyone was mobbing grocery stores and buying all the toilet paper and stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think in her interview, the talking interviews, she was saying like being an essential worker, going to working like at the store every day has been very difficult. And like we were saying, the kinds of people that can take time off right now to be able to go to Survivor, a lot of the students, teachers who like maybe take the semester off. It's the summertime kind of thing. So it is interesting, like you were saying, the different demographics of people based off of their job. And I'm excited to see Jeannie. She said that her proudest accomplishment was getting a Hustle Award at the age of 15 at a basketball camp, which I think it's more of a joke, and I think it shows more of her personality. Usually I get sort of annoyed when people are like, oh, my biggest accomplishment happened in like middle school or something, because they're only a high school or like they're only college age. They don't really have anything else to go on. But Jeannie being older, it seems like this is her personality. She's a jokester and maybe will like play to that, to her advantages on the tribe, as being funny.
Yeah, and I guess one of the things we also have talked about with like students versus like full grown adults is that when you're a student, you're still figuring out who you are. Whereas like people who are older, like Jeannie and like the other like older contestants on the season, they kind of know who they are and are able to like, I feel like, balance that better with the game they want to play. Whereas if you're not really sure who you are, that makes it more difficult to then play a strategic game where you have to be like a version of yourself but slanted.
Yeah, and especially being older, having more experiences working as a grocery clerk, she can probably be a good communicator and be able to deal with a lot of different kinds of people. You know, having a customer service job at the store, having other kinds of customer service jobs, you're going to deal with like the really, really rude customers. And so that can translate well to Survivor. I think dealing with all of these different kinds of people that maybe she's helped along the way as a grocery clerk in her job, day-to-day life, which is interesting. Jeannie, one of those people in the interview who said that she doesn't want to play like any prior contestants, but she wants to have many alliances and work with like all different kinds of people. So I can see her job and being able to communicate and work with different kinds of people doing well for her in Survivor. But I do worry when you say that you want to have a lot of alliances, to be cautious of the fact that you aren't being seen as like a flipper or someone who's indecisive, but having a lot of alliances and knowing when you need to flip on the alliance and when you need to zig and zag and go with one group versus going with the other group.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see in the future, I guess. I know we've been saying that with everyone, but it's so difficult, I feel like, to predict human behavior. Because, like, you might be able to predict how one person will behave, but when you put them all together on an island, like, people do weird and strange things. So,
Yes, I think I'm excited.
yes, I
Jeannie,
am also
she'll
excited.
grant some wishes.
So, next on our list is Heather. She's a 52-year-old stay-at-home mom from Charleston, South Carolina. Um, She says one of her hobbies is pickleball, which I only know about pickleball because I went to the place where pickleball was invented once. So that's pretty cool. But
Oh
I
my
feel
gosh.
like
I
pickleball
wrote
is such a weird thing.
I wrote in my notes she likes pickleball, and I've only heard about pickleball because Tyson Apostle like plays a bunch of pickleball and is like a pickleball ambassador.
Yeah, it's just, I feel like it's definitely a conversation starter. But
Yeah, Heather, interesting. She wants to become the oldest female winner. Seems like she has had a very challenging upbringing. She didn't really talk about it in the interview, but she alluded to like struggling earlier in life. So it seems like a lot of the people on this season have not had the best childhoods, the older tribe mates. So I feel like she could relate to them based off of her upbringing. She's a little bit quirky. She says she has a passion for possums, which I don't think they'll have those in Fiji, but she could talk about that.
She also says she cusses like a drunk, sunburned sailor, which might also be applicable in Fiji depending on how much sunscreen they put on. So,
Yeah, she seems very like go with the flow, surfer girl-esque, very, whimsical, quirky. For the survivor contestant, she wants to play like she says Rick for a fun adventure. Tina is calculated, direct, but kind. The kindness of Lisa Welchel and the savviness of Chrissy. I feel like Heather and Lisa look similar. If you like put their cast photos next to each other, maybe they look very similar.
I don't see that, but if you do, good for
Maybe
you.
just like blonde women. I feel like Heather and Tiffany on this season sort of look similar too.
Everyone is entitled to their own opinions. So, yeah.
But Heather seems like a nice lady. I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't really have anything else besides that. It'll be interesting to see if this niceness and like quirkiness translates to the show or if it flops and like she's an early boot.
Yeah. I think translating to the show is difficult sometimes when like contestants focus on being nice, because sometimes that's threatening because people don't want nice people. And sometimes it can be hard to be nice to a bunch of strangers when you're also tired and hungry and cold.
Yeah, so next up we have Jairus, who is 20 from Oklahoma, still in Oklahoma, and he is a college student. So one of these young college students, we're going into that realm now. So Jairus, one of the things that he does, he says he's a college campus tour guide. I do wonder, is that helpful? I also was a campus tour guide throughout college. So I don't know. You're good at public speaking as a campus tour guide. You like talk to a bunch of people, you command the room, you're the center of attention, and you're probably good at thinking of answers on the top of your feet, like really quickly, because all of these parents, students might ask you questions that you've never heard before, and then you have to make up an answer. So it could be good for like final tribal council or being able to talk to a lot of people, because he says he also likes to do public speaking. But yeah, I don't know. Being a tour guide in itself, I don't think it helps you. For me, I don't know. I don't think it helps me in Survivor besides being able to talk.
I feel like there's also like, I don't know, maybe this was just the tour guides at my school, but there was definitely like an association of like what kind of person becomes a tour guide.
And, like, what are you saying? What's the stereotype?
Like kind of loud and sometimes obnoxious. So like some of my friends were tour guides, so obviously I don't agree with that, but like there's some like, what kind of person wants to be a tour guide? So I don't know. Maybe it's different at his school.
Yeah, I could see it. It definitely attracts a certain kind of person. Guess it depends if it's paid or unpaid. So like for my tour guide job, it was a paid job, versus if it's like an unpaid job or you get like class credit, I think you definitely attract very like loud, I don't know, people that like being the center of attention, which I would say I'm more like introverted and shy, but I don't know. Yeah. Tours are fun.
I feel like the thing that might be more applicable is that he's a kindergarten teacher. And I feel like in order to be a successful kindergarten teacher, you need to have the patience of a saint. Because like 20 small kids in a classroom together, whew, that's a lot.
I feel like his experience doing the teaching, volunteering at the children's hospital especially would be good, because he is younger, having the tour guide experience, talking with parents, students from all over the world, having this experience with children at the hospital and stuff like that could help him relate to the older contestants who might have kids or grandkids. So I think that will be really helpful for Jairus in the show. And he seems to be very athletic. He says he is a 2-time state track champion. He's going to be very good at running. There's a lot of other people on this cast who really like running and are good at running as well, which we'll get to later on the cast list. So I feel like Jairus, seemingly for the younger students, is more of a full package, maybe because he, even though he is young, has those experiences and he is athletic.
Yeah, it seems like he definitely has a lot of the good things. I think the one thing that I was kind of like questionable about is he calls Fabio a great Survivor winner. But other than that, I agree with like a lot of what he said. So
yeah, he wants to play like Parvati, Fabio, and Jeremy. maybe Fabio is more of like the social aspect of the game, because later on he does say that he was popular in high school, which I thought that was a little bit questionable. It definitely shows his age because, like, oh, he just finished high school and now he's just starting college. And he was saying how, oh, in high school, I could relate to every kind of clique, the jocks, the nerds, the marching band kids. So I don't know. I'm like, that's sort of makes it like a little bit iffy, that kind of answer. And it definitely shows how young he is.
Also, I feel like people who think that they were popular with everyone in high school definitely were not. Like, I can think of like maybe 2 people in our entire high school who like genuinely everyone liked. So
yeah, it's a little bit of questionable. We need to see his high school dynamics to see like how will that actually translate to Survivor. In the question about what did you do during quarantine, the YouTube interview, he said he listened to a lot of Survivor podcasts, so seemingly big fan of the show.
Yeah. So next on our list is, oh shoot, Lyanna. I forget how to say
I think
her name already. Okay, Lyanna, who is also 20 years old, and she's from Evanston, Illinois, but now she's in Washington, D.C. She's also a college student, so woohoo. And I thought it was funny because they mentioned that she is a lifelong fan of Survivor, and the show has literally been going on her entire life. And like, it's weird because for us, Survivor has basically been on our entire life too, but I don't think about it in that way. But like, they're really making a point of how young these people are and the fact that they are younger than the show. And I wonder if that's going to show up in some way.
Oh my gosh, it's the new Sierra voted out her mom. This contestant was born in the womb before Survivor even started. Like, I feel like Jeff is going to say that so many times this season. It seems like whenever there is a young contestant, he always says stuff like that, like, oh, Survivor aired before you're even born. And so especially with all of these young people being born in like the 2000s and later, he's going to say that so much.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of like how in Millennials versus Gen X, they kept pointing out how young Will was, and it's just like, please, I don't want to keep hearing this over and over.
Yeah, I feel like for Lyanna, I think her and Evie will get along really well. They seem to both be very like social justice oriented, and Lyanna is another one of those people who didn't put a family member as their hero, but Lyanna said Misty Copeland, where Evie put AOC. So I think, I don't know, maybe it's just me. I want to see them two like chat, and it seems like they can get along really well because they both seem, you know, like very aware of their surroundings, what's going on in the world, and like fighting for equality and social justice.
Yeah, I mean, Lyanna also said that she performed her spoken word for Congressman John Lewis, who is very much in like the vein of AOC, of like fighting for justice and stuff like that. So I feel like they have similar political heroes as well. Misty Copeland is amazing, though. I wholeheartedly endorse Misty Copeland being somebody's hero. So
better than their mom and dad, I guess. A more interesting answer. But yeah. Lyanna says she wants to play like Tony and Elaine. And she mentioned how certain parts of Tony's game were annoying to watch as a viewer. So it was really interesting because it seems like she's aware that, oh, this is a TV show. I am in the TV show now, but how will this come across to people watching the TV show at home? Sort of like, I feel like an Adam Klein was very aware to that fact. A Mike White was very aware to that fact of, I'm doing this in the game, but extrapolating out, how will this look on the TV? And like, how will I come across? So like, I don't know. Maybe she'll play into that, or also it could hinder her if she's saying stuff and doing things just because she thinks America will like it.
Yeah. So I think that'll be interesting. I really hope that she goes far. Like you said, I hope that she and Evie get to talk. So
yeah, Lyanna seems super chill, super fun and upbeat from her interviews that she's done. And she wants to go out and be herself, lead with authenticity, which I think is a good idea. Being herself, she can get allies rather than lying about like different parts of her personality.
Yeah.
So going up on Nasir. Nasir is 37, from Sri Lanka originally, and now is in California. He is a sales manager. So Nasir dislikes laziness and people who don't contribute to group efforts, which I thought was funny because there's going to be a lot of that on Survivor, which is so sad.
Yeah, I thought it was funny.
I didn't get that. Could you try
hometown,
again?
They put Sri Lanka instead of like a city in Sri Lanka, and it's like Sri Lanka is not a town; it's a whole ass island. Like you could have at least put like, I don't know if they have like counties or prefectures or something like that, but like that's like saying hometown United States. Like it's a whole country. So that was like something that peeved me about the way that they talked about where he was from.
Maybe it's like the ignorance of Americans to know world geography, because I feel like a similar thing happens for international students at college. Whenever it's like introduce yourself, they never say the like locale that they're from, but they just are like, oh, India or China or like Brazil. So it's like they maybe it's that kind of thing where they don't think that we know the place, or also maybe Survivor production is like, no one cares. But I feel like wherever he is from in Sri Lanka is important because he has such an inspiring story, and he's talked about it throughout the interviews about how he grew up. And so, like knowing where he is from is helpful to see who he is as a person now and then.
Yeah, I guess it's like one of those things about like, even if I do not instantly recognize the town in Sri Lanka that he's from, that's what Google is for. Like, it seems stupid to live in an age of information and then like not give people the chance to learn new things.
But anyways, Survivor limiting us.
Yeah. I agree though that his story is really inspiring. He mentioned that like for the first 18 years of his life he didn't have running water, and so like the like survival aspect of Survivor isn't actually going to be that difficult for him because like he knows what it's like to live without running water, to have to get his own food and stuff like that. So that's cool.
Yeah, I think hopefully he's someone on the show that like people will be drawn to hear his story, they'll be inspired by. And so I think like how you were saying before, how the nerd character is usually seen as, oh, so cute, let's bring you under our wing. I could definitely see someone like Nasir being seen as the, oh, so cute, your story is so inspiring, like we want to bring you further because we like hearing you talk and we like hearing your story. So I hope that's the case. Nasir seems so cool, and it'd be such a shame if he got voted out early before we could hear his stories on TV.
Yeah. One thing I will say is he was one of the people that was like, I am original and not like anyone else. And I feel like one of the only reasons that I'm okay with this is because I can't think of another person on Survivor who was like an immigrant to the United States who grew up without having like running water and stuff like that. So maybe his story is unique, and so that gives him like such a unique perspective from like a lot of people in the US who like, even if they grew up in poverty, it was like a different kind of poverty than what Nasir grew up with in Sri Lanka.
Yeah, and some more Sri Lankan representation with Natalie and Nadia also being Sri Lankan. So I think something interesting also about Nasir is he says he's a runner in the what he did during quarantine. He like ran a lot. So with all of those college athletes that run or they ran in high school, for the people coming up, maybe he can relate to them by running a lot, since everyone on this cast likes to run for some reason.
Don't know why. But maybe that will make them interesting during the challenges because it won't be like someone who's just kind of like basically walking the running part.
I guess it depends. All these people that are runners, it's like if they do more of the log challenge and you have long distance runners, it'll be great. But from all the other Survivor challenges, it's more like sprint running, which if they're sprinters or like short distance college runners, they'll be fine at. But it'll be interesting if someone's a long distance runner and then we get a log challenge and then they beast that out super well.
Yeah. But yeah, long story short, I can't talk today. Long story short, I'm really interested to see more of Nasir. I hope we get to hear more about like his life because it seems like he has a really cool story. So
yeah, get this man his own podcast afterward. I think a lot of people would want to listen. He seems so cool.
Exactly. So next on our list is Sarah, who is...
Or Ricard first.
Oh dear, I didn't have notes for him. I guess I must have just skipped him. Uh-oh.
Oh my gosh, it's the parade thing. Yeah, it's the parade.com website. It's too hard to navigate. But yeah, Ricard, 31, he's from Washington, and he is a flight attendant. He was born deaf in one ear, so he really wants to bring awareness to like the queer community as well as the hard of hearing community, which is very interesting. A pet peeve for Ricard is that when you get asked a question and then the answer is just ignored, which might be a problem on Survivor because it seems like a lot of people like ask for advice or things like that, but then they never take your advice or plan into consideration.
Yeah, that's going to be hard for him. So
I guess while you're skim reading on that annoying parade scrolly thing, he seems very outgoing as a flight attendant. You have to talk to a lot of people. It seems like he had another job based off of another interview, but he's also a flight attendant, but he put flight attendant as his like main job here. So he might be like very multifaceted, having a lot of different kinds of jobs. So that will be interesting. Very outgoing, seems to go with the flow. He quit one job and then he bought like a one-way plane ticket to do other things and travel. So very like go with the flow, spontaneous, which could be good for Survivor if you don't get stuck too much down in one plan. Like, I need to play this way, I need to do this thing. But if Ricard takes that information of being go with the flow and using it to his advantage, like flip-flopping wherever the numbers go and wherever the like power lies, that could be useful and could take some of his day-to-day activities and bring it into Survivor.
Yeah, from my very brief skim, it seems like he is a good player. I like his answer to the question of which Survivor player will play the game most like, because he says Aubrey but win. And I feel like that ties back to what we were saying earlier, where you don't have to be like, oh, I'm totally unique. You can be like, I want to be like this other person, but better. So he wants to be like Aubrey, but win.
Short and sweet, too. So I think maybe one negative in the YouTube interview, he says he doesn't want to tell too many jokes. But I feel like if you are the clown, if people think you're funny, I feel like he should be telling his jokes if he's a funny dude, because people will want to keep you around because you're chill, you're fun to hang out with, like you're the comedic relief in a sucky Survivor reigning season. Like you want that person around rather than keeping the Debbie Downer complainer people around all the time. So I feel like he should be sharing his jokes.
Yeah, so I do wonder because there was another contestant on Survivor who was hard of hearing, Nina from the Collar season. I don't feel like saying the whole name. And like she was talking about, I think she mentioned how it was difficult for her to like relate to people because since she had hearing aids and like sometimes couldn't hear what people were saying, like it was difficult for her because people like wouldn't repeat themselves for her and stuff like that. So I hope that he doesn't run into those same kinds of troubles on the season, because that's something where it's like, it's not really his fault if people won't repeat themselves for him, but it is like something that is important in the game, I guess, especially because I know that people who are hard of hearing sometimes have a hard time with like hearing whispers. So like if you have a live tribal or whatever and people are whispering and you're not able to hear them, that can be difficult. And I hope that like there are people in the game who are willing to like find other ways to communicate with him. It would be cool if someone else spoke ASL, because I know there's another contestant who mentioned speaking like 3 or 4 different languages, and like I personally think that ASL should be something that more people are taught or try to learn. So
yeah, definitely. I think from his experiences, he says that he can lip read quite well. Like you were saying, he knows ASL. And from growing up being deaf in one ear, he was saying how he's more in tune to like body language, silent signals like that. So I think that can translate really well into Survivor. Like, oh, maybe a person didn't say something, but their body language indicates something else. So maybe he'll like pick up on those small things that other people don't necessarily pick up on.
Yeah, exactly. So
now you can go on to Sarah.
Yeah, Sarah, who is a 24-year-old healthcare consultant from California, currently living in Massachusetts. Rachel, you said you had a joke you wanted to make about her name.
Well, just Sarah Wilson. So this is Nick Wilson's like sister, long lost cousin. So Sarah is destined for greatness just with that last name.
Yeah, I guess she is another one of those people whose pet peeves are kind of like, how will this be relevant in the game? Because I feel like one of her pet peeves is uncleanliness, and it's like, Sarah, I have something to tell you about what it's going to be like to be living with the ocean as your only source of like cleaning and bathing. People probably aren't going to be smelling super great.
It's so relevant. Maybe she'll like evict, self-quit because of the loud chewing and how uncleanly people are when they're all stinky out there. Sarah's another one of those smart people, went to MIT. She is sort of a student, only 24, but that means like she's our age. She just got out of college. So I would say she has more life experiences because now she's working full time rather than being the like 20-year-old college student still in college. So I think that can help play to her advantage because she has had that experience of having a full-time job while also like she's probably, you know, paying her own bills, managing a budget, you know, maybe all that stuff, which current college students might not have if like their parents are paying for their dorm, they have a meal plan. So it's different kinds of experiences there that I think Sarah has, which might be different from other college students who are still in school.
Yeah, she says that she wants to play the game like Kim Stradlin, who I feel like is one of those winners that doesn't get mentioned enough. But yeah.
I think one negative, she says that she wants to keep her MIT undergrad schooling a secret, which can be good or it can be bad. I feel like in this season, and maybe once she sees and she talks to the rest of her tribe mates, that she will share her schooling because it does seem like this cast is very proud of the schooling that they've gone through, especially with all the students. If she like lies and maybe she says she goes to another school in Boston, not Harvard, but maybe like Boston College or something instead of MIT, like I think just saying MIT might help her because there are so many other students on this cast who went to top colleges as well. But I don't know. I think since she wants to lie about her schooling, if she's going to get overlooked as not intelligent because she didn't go to MIT, it could play against her because people are like, oh, she might not be smart.
Yeah, and like I don't think it's one of those things where like people aren't automatically gonna vote you out because you went to MIT unless you're like a jerk about it, you know? Like if you try to act all holier than thou or like you're smarter than everyone, then yeah, you're gonna get voted out. But like it's not like as soon as they hear the words MIT, they're gonna be like, oh, she has to go. It's all about your attitude.
Exactly. So it's like she knows she's smart. Other people who hear MIT will be like, yeah, she's smart, but you know, you can go to a top school and not be smart. Like there are those kinds of people who are just like lucky out there, or like they don't need to study, but they're like book smart in the way that they just grasp concepts really, really easily. Adam went to Stanford. He said that he didn't want to lie about his schooling because it's just something unnecessary to lie about, because once you're out there, you're going to be lying about so many other things. If you constantly have to like check yourself and like make up different things about your schooling or your undergrad career, it gets really difficult. So it's something like, don't lie about those easy things because it's going to be harder to keep track of, especially like Evie, also Harvard, Boston area. Sarah, if she says she goes to some other college in Boston or in Massachusetts, it's going to be difficult for her to like make up things unless she's like super familiar with that other college or like the Boston area in general.
Yeah, so it's like lie about the easy things that don't actually matter in the long run. And I feel like that this is one of those things.
So I'm interested to see if that plays for her or for like against her, lying about her schooling. She also said that she's a long distance swimmer, so different from running, but she seems to be very athletic, will be good at the challenges. One of her hobbies is poker, which Oh, poker players don't necessarily do that well. They're either like pre-merge or they win the game. But I don't know. Poker players, it's like an interesting. I think playing poker can help her in the game, definitely.
Yeah, I feel like there's a difference between playing poker as a hobby and playing poker as a career. So she might be okay since poker is her hobby and not like
yeah, she's not a professional poker player. But Sarah, as a healthcare consultant, she can probably relate to like David and was Desean is the med student with her healthcare profession. And she said that she lost her father to lung cancer. So I think she can definitely have a lot to like relate with the other contestants on in terms of medicine and losing her grandfather, medicine and like losing a family member to like cancer or other diseases.
Yeah. So Sarah seems interesting. I want to see how that whole MIT lying thing pans out for her.
Yeah, Sarah, I do worry. People are saying she's a Parvati 2.0. When we get to Sydney, they're saying Sydney could be a Parvati 2.0. I feel like Sarah sort of reminds me of Chelsea Walker from Island of the Idols, where Chelsea was so hyped preseason as being a super fan, going to be so great at the game, but then voted out early. I could sort of see a similar trajectory for Sarah, being like a fan of the show, but then getting voted out early.
Yeah. So we'll see.
Next up, we have Chantel, who is 34, originally from Canada, but she is in DC now. Lyanna is also in DC with Georgetown, and Chantel is a pastor. So similar to those other pet peeves that relate too much to Survivor, her pet peeve is that she dislikes bad breath. And so one of those things. No one out here is brushing their teeth. Maybe she self-evicts because of everyone's stinky morning breath.
Yeah. I feel like the thing with Chantel is I feel like the stuff that she said was kind of like vague. Like she was like, I went to therapy to fight my demons. My mother fought her demons. And it's kind of like, it's very like kind of like inspirational, but very unspecific. And so, like, I wish that we had learned more about her as a person.
It seems like from her answers that she's gone through a lot in her life, which will be like able to relate to all of those other people. Like we were saying, a lot of the older people have had like difficult childhoods. And so like being able to relate on that, like nothing was like handed to them, things like that. And yeah, I don't know. She seems like very multifaceted, saying like how her childhood was. And she was also like in a gang growing up. And so it'll be interesting if she does talk about that on the island or if she's more of a private person and she's only going to talk about her current life now.
Yeah, and I guess that makes sense. But also, if you don't really talk about your life, like your past or whatever, I feel like sometimes people think of that as shady. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, so Chantel, another one of the Kim people, she wants to play strategically like Kim, relationally like Ty and Get Idols, and also Parvati. So pretty standard picks there. I think Chantel seems really, really sweet. She has a nice voice, but I don't know, doesn't necessarily stand out with her cast bio here.
Yeah. I think the only thing I can think of, like off the top of my head, that like might be a problem for her is that there's also, like we've talked about with other jobs, there's a big stereotype against pastors. I feel like people in general, like Christianity can be a touchy subject for people in the United States, especially because there's a lot of like Christians who do stuff in the name of God that a lot of people don't like. So I will be interested to see how she navigates that, if she's honest about being a pastor.
Yeah, that is really interesting. In like previous seasons, we've talked about, oh, there's numerous people that are very religious. And then it's like, oh, how will that impact the game? Or will they like not share their religiousness and their upbringing and stuff? So it is interesting. Will Chantel be very private or will she be very open about like who she is?
Yeah. So I guess, like I said, we'll have to see.
Yeah, I feel like she's probably the one on the cast right now with the most question marks. So it'll be interesting to listen to the Rob Has a Podcast talking interviews to see more of what she's like because, yeah, all of her answers were sort of vague, but also to the point enough that it's like, oh, yeah, that's a fine answer.
Yeah. So next on our list is Sydney. She is 26. She is from California, but currently in New York. She's in Brooklyn, and she's a law student.
Pet peeve, bodily noises, sniffing, snoring, heavy breathing, and coughing. So similar to like all those other people, she might have a problem out there.
Yeah. I feel like the one thing that was the biggest red flag for me was something that she said in one of the Entertainment Weekly interviews. And she said that like she went out a lot during quarantine. And I was like, ma'am, you live in New York City, which is one of the like epicenters of COVID. And you were like, oh yeah, I don't live with anyone who's immunocompromised or anything, so it's fine for me to go out. And I was like, ma'am? So, like, that is just a huge, huge, huge red flag for me.
Yeah, I do wonder, like, how, if she talks about that, because, like, you're going to be bored on the island. You're going to be like, oh, what did you do over the past year? Like, what's everyone up to? How did the pandemic affect you? And especially for, like, frontline workers. So, like, you know, Jeannie working at the grocery store or, like, David as a doctor probably has experience. And even one of the interviews, they were saying how they had a parent die of COVID or like a family member or something. So if Sydney does talk about how she was traveling and stuff during the pandemic, it might rub people the wrong way and then get her voted out because of that.
Yeah. I mean, also the medical student, also a lot of med students started working in hospitals earlier than they normally did just because hospitals needed more people to help them during like the heights of COVID surges. So I feel like anyone who's even remotely in healthcare would be like, what the heck? So
yeah, Jairus, Sarah also working in healthcare, Jairus working with the kids at the hospital. Like it could rub a lot of people the wrong way if she brings it up on the island, which if she's bringing it up in the interviews, she seems very open.
Yeah, even the people who aren't like directly affected, like who aren't healthcare workers or whatever, I'm sure that like a lot of people are going to be upset about that because like one of the reasons that COVID has gone on as long as it has is because there are people who continue to be irresponsible. So,
and people who may not work in like job that is still in person right now. They could have family, friends that have been affected kind of thing. So you never know how like far reaching it is if she's like, oh, just talking to people, but she thinks the people on her tribe like don't know anyone or anything like that. But then like, oh, they have a grandparent or family member or friend who has had COVID or may have passed away or something like that. So,
or even people who have had to like miss major events because of COVID. Like there's a lot of people who like we didn't get to graduate college because of COVID and like stuff like that where like everyone has been affected by it. And so to have someone kind of just be like, oh yeah, I got to travel, I got to go out and do all these things, like yeah, I'll be interested to see if that comes up at all because like you said, it seems like she would be pretty open about it. But if she is, I can't imagine how that would be good for her.
Speaking of relating to Jairus, Sydney is another one of those runner people. She was a cross-country champion back in high school, it seems. So with all those people who like running, Sydney fits right in. Another thing, it seems like Sydney is, I guess, very confident of herself, which is a good thing. You know, you always love confident people, but it seems like it might veer to the side of where she has a really, really big ego that might piss people off because she seems like very confident of herself to the point of like arrogance and cockiness.
Yeah. So she is one of the people in the cast who like I would prefer not to see go far, but I guess like with everyone else, we'll have to see. Maybe her interview misrepresented her.
Yeah, so she wants to play like Natalie White, which is an interesting pick. And she seems however it goes, like she's going to be a character on TV. Almost reminds me a little bit like how Angelina is a big character on TV. If Sydney makes it far, I can see her doing like those kind of wild antics, or she could be like a first boot or pre-merge.
Yeah, so I guess we'll see with her.
So moving on to Tiffany. Tiffany is 47 from New York and a teacher. So no more teaching time with Tommy. We have teaching time with Tiffany. So I wonder, she was only cast because of that alliteration there, and Survivor wants that teacher-student fighting relationship. So similar to the other people, Tiffany hates people that, or like, her answer, she says she hates brushing her teeth before bed and never washes her face. And I was like, what?
Someone who hates brushing their teeth versus the person who hates bad breath. You guys are going to get along so well.
And I'm like, that's sort of gross, though. You need to brush your teeth before bed. Like, all the stuff you ate throughout the day is going to be lodged in your gums. We need a dentist on the cast to tell her to brush her teeth and floss.
Yeah, like, I feel my teeth getting grimier as we are talking about it. But, like, just because she hates doing it doesn't mean she necessarily doesn't do it. So
hopefully.
Let's just cross our fingers for that one.
If she makes it the 26 days, it'll be so great because she never has to brush her teeth or wash her face, morning or night. I don't know. Tiffany didn't really stand out to me. She, in the talking interview, they asked, why are you going to win the game? And her answer was, it is time to win, and I will do that. Like,
yeah.
That didn't answer the question. What?
She also mentioned in, like, the Survivor players she will play like, she was like Ozzy, Colby, and Parvati. And I feel like those are three, like, pretty big names. That also doesn't really give us that much of an answer because I feel like Ozzy, Colby, and Parvati played very different games. So.
Yeah, Tiffany, I'm like, we need to see more. So, like, the RHAP interviews, it'll be interesting to see what she says and if she can actually answer the question of why she thinks she's going to win. And maybe she can tell us about that brushing her teeth thing and washing her face. Because I'm like, how do you have, maybe her teeth are fake, but, like, she's got pearly whites. So, what is up?
Yeah. I think Tiffany was it. She was the last one, right? Did I miss someone else?
Oh my gosh, did you miss Xander with the X?
What the heck, parade?
You're just clicking too fast. Yeah. Goes to show the parade website is way too hard to navigate. But yes. Xander is the last one with the X name after Tiffany. Xander's 21. He is from Florida. Now he is in Chicago at U Chicago. And his job is an app developer. So I don't know. That's probably nitpicking, but I was a little bit annoyed. Why would he put his occupation as an app developer? Like, you should put student down if you're a student, right? It's not like, oh, say Alyssa and I were still in college. We wouldn't put podcaster as our job title. Like,
the thing is, some people do it to make themselves, like, look better. So
I'm like, it's just app developer. I don't know. Unless, like, your app is super famous or you dropped out of school to work on this app, because I know people from college who left school because they're developing an app and, like, they just got angel funding and, like, they're making their app right now. But if he's still in school and your app isn't, like, up and running and it's not getting funding and you're not, like, it's not a big app yet, like, I don't know. I think he should have put student, but that's probably nitpicking him.
Yeah. So I'm skimming, and I feel like the question that always, like, gives me some eyebrow raises is when people say who they want to play like, and they list people who didn't win. And he listed 3 people who didn't win in Jay, Joe, and Devin. It's like, if you want to say that your archetype is the pretty boy challenge beast charmer, say that you want to play like Fabio. Like, at least he won the game.
Oh my gosh. I was like, okay, these 3 guys, Jay, Joe, Devin, you all have the same hair. So Xander does fit in because they all have, like, nice hair. So I guess it relates to that. But yeah, I don't know. Pretty boy challenge beast charmers. I guess that's an archetype.
Yeah. It's
But
he's also pretty young. I can't believe that he's younger than we are. So
yeah, an interesting thing with Xander, if you watched The Circle season 2 for the US Circle, did you watch that season?
I don't remember.
Summer was so long ago. But yeah, Xander is Jack, aka Emily from The Circle season 2 US. He's Jack's little, so they're in the same fraternity at U Chicago, which is like a weird, interesting connection of people there. But Xander, also a runner, he can relate to all of the other runners on this cast. And this dude seems like a really, really big nerd. He says he loves the pursuit of knowledge and experience. That question, Alyssa. And then it goes on forever. Like, he talks way too much. That answer was just so long. Yeah, just listing all of these like big words, things that he likes to do. So I do wonder if like that is him in real life and he will like talk people's ears off, or if he'll come off more in a way like, oh yeah, I'm a student or whatever, or if it'll come off as like, I'm smarter than you, I'm better than you kind of thing.
Yeah. So I feel like his personality might not jive well with everyone else's on the tribes.
Honestly, I could see him going quite early, even though he is a self-proclaimed pretty boy challenge beast charmer. He's so young, and it seems like all of these other people on the cast, they have more like life experiences, but also, I don't know, it just seems like you'd vote him out early.
Yeah. But like we said, the interview is not always indicative of what the cast member is actually like. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, because he likes antiquing. So maybe he's an old soul at heart, and then he can relate to the older people on the cast.
Yeah. So, is he the last one?
Yes.
Screw me over again. Okay. I guess we already went over our thoughts of like the cast as a whole. I didn't think of anything that we didn't mention earlier that I want to say. Other than that, this seems like a pretty solid cast. I'm interested to see how they all interact and to see who gets on a tribe with whom.
Yeah, so I'm super excited to watch the Rob Has a Podcast interviews now, to hear these people talk, how they act on camera kind of thing, because typing out your little answers is way different from how you come across on camera. And then with that also, how you come across and how you answer the interview questions can be way different from how you actually come across on the island. So definitely like 3 steps of separation there. But this was our Survivor Season 41 cast assessment. On Thursday after Big Brother, we will do a tribe reaction and assessment. And then in the coming weeks before Survivor airs, we will do a boot list and a tricks and twists podcast for Survivor 41. So a lot of really fun and exciting Survivor 41 related content coming up, which I'm so excited about. The preseason is always the best time of the Survivor season.
Yep, and as always, let us know your thoughts, your opinions, your gripes in the comments down below, and we will see you guys